And now it's time for the, oh shit. And now it's time for the best. That's right, after not making a best of the year list for last year, I'm come back to do it this year. Narrowing the list down to just 10 movies this year was actually more difficult than I thought it would be. We got a lot of really entertaining movies this year, and I think this was actually a pretty decent year for cinema, which is good because it wasn't a decent year for literally anything else. Let's just go, let's just get into it, we're gonna do it! At number 10 we got War for the Planet of the Apes. It is a commonly believed thing that the third movie in a trilogy is usually the weakest. I mean, you can look over plenty of movies and see examples of this. It happens a lot. So naturally, when you hear them announce the third movie in a trilogy, you're usually excited, but also a little bit skeptical because you know how these things typically shake out. So that's why I'm very happy to report that not only is War for the Planet of the Apes as good as the other movies in the trilogy, it might be the best one. I think this was the year of movies not going the direction you'd expect, and I think that's a very good thing. I'd rather us be championing movies that went off in a new direction and didn't give us the same old typical stuff. From the trailers and the title, you would expect it to be a certain type of movie, and that's really not the way it goes, but I am so thankful for that. This movie focuses on what it should focus on, the people living in this world and how things are changing, and I think that's done really well. You get to spend your time with some really interesting and likable characters, and my god, the special effects in this movie are some of the best I have ever seen. I think the benefit of these movies taking so long to complete with the special effects is that they also have a lot of time to give us a story that's worth telling. Things feel really polished and well done, and so that's why I personally really enjoyed it, and that's why it's on the list. At number 9, we got The Disaster Artist. In making a movie about The Room and Tommy Wiseau specifically, you're gonna face a lot of challenges. Mainly, how do you bring this weird, mysterious figure to life accurately? Like, he's a very unique individual, but honestly, James Franco nails it. I was as skeptical as everyone else when I heard that James Franco was making a movie about The Room and that he was going to play Tommy Wiseau, but it really works. Yeah, there are parts in the movie that I find kind of cliched and corny, but overall, I think this is very respectfully done. On top of that, it's pretty funny. There's a lot of funny moments in here, and I think anybody who's watched The Room and sort of had these questions come up, I think you'll get a lot of enjoyment out of this, because I did. At number 8, we got Logan. I don't care about Wolverine. As a character, I find him pretty boring. I've never been a fan of those characters that you could sort of deal any damage you want to and they'll always bounce back. I think that takes a lot of tension out of these stories and you need that kind of tension to hold back some of this stuff. But I'm happy that they made this movie because this finally got me on board with this cinematic interpretation of the character. There were a lot of ways you could handle this movie and the source material that it's taking inspiration from, and I think this was the best possible outcome. The comic that this is largely based off of is kinda bad, but they really took the elements and themes that worked in that story and sort of made them better. I think this is a really interesting way to go with this character, and I think the maturity with which they handle this story really elevates it to something better than it probably would have been otherwise. It's a story about getting older and moving on and dying and what to do when you're sort of giving up hope, and I think it's done really well. Number 7, we got Get Out. I think one thing you'll see throughout this list is that I really love when filmmakers don't do the typical thing that you would expect. And that's one thing that is definitely true with Jordan Peele's directorial debut, Get Out. Being someone who's more known for comedy and stuff like that, you would expect Peele's debut to be something more in line with that, something more comedic or, you know, something to just test the waters a bit, but no. He went full force and decided to make this daring horror movie that really, really works. Like, I don't really even want to say anything about it because for those who haven't seen it, you should honestly just watch it. It's one of the most interesting and best crafted horror movies I've seen in a long while, and I'm happy it got as big as it did because it really deserves it. This has been a great year for horror, both in movies and just in life. Everything from the performances to the tension to the way it builds, it's just really well done, and I'm glad that Jordan Peele finally had like the resources to make something like this because it really pays off. There's not much I can say about it that hasn't been said already. If you haven't seen it, please check it out. It is one of the best horror movies I've seen all year. At number 6, we got Marvel. Oh boy. And I know this is a cheat, I know this technically makes it the top 12 movies of the year, but come on, this list was hard. Let's just roll, let's have fun, because that's what these movies were. They were a lot of fun. Now, I've always been a pretty big fan of the Marvel movies. I mean, I grew up reading the comics, so for me, this is like seeing my childhood up there on the big screen. I get people's issues with them and their criticisms, and I think for the most part, those are all valid, but at the same time, when it works, it works. I remember a time when the Marvel movie was kind of a crapshoot. You would always be getting genuine entertainment, but in terms of overall quality, it was like, you either ranged from really, really good to just sort of, you know, forgettable. But I think all three movies that they put out this year were terrifically pulled off. Spider-Man Homecoming makes it feel like the character's been ripped straight from the pages of the comic books and put on the screen, and that's something that, at least for me, I've never seen before. The past two Spider-Man series had their ups and downs, but throughout all of them, I always sort of saw them as their own thing. It felt like the character was finally done in a way that really resonated with me, and I like the updates they made to it, and I like all the things that they kept the same. And Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, this would have been the perfect chance to just up the ante, get a bigger movie, make it bigger, louder, dumber, but James Gunn didn't do that. He really focused in more on the characters and the emotional moments, and I'm very happy about that. Because I like these characters, and I like seeing what they're going through, and I like the way it's handled, and this film had some emotional moments that really got me. And Thor Ragnarok's just hilarious. Like, I hear people have their problems with the fact that it really is just an outright comedy, but I'm not complaining because Taika Waititi's a very funny guy, and this is a very funny movie. But on top of that, something I feel isn't being talked enough about is the themes that it deals with. Like, a big part of this movie is dealing with the fact that violent history often gets covered up with other stories and how that's not right at all. And I think that's kind of an important message these days. So yeah, I agree. It is a cheat to put 3 different movies in this spot, but honestly, like, I loved all 3 of them just about the same. I really love them, but there were some other movies on here that I also wanted to get on the list. So you know what? It's my list. I can do what I want. And at number 5, we got Baby Driver. Edgar Wright makes films that are really good to rewatch, and I think this is down to his directorial style, his humor, and his music choices. His films are set up in this very kinetic way that just makes them so easily rewatchable and very enjoyable to show to new people, and I think he has done that again with Baby Driver. And of course, the interesting thing about this film is just how much music plays a part of it. As a filmmaker myself, I think music is very important to the art of storytelling. And yeah, this movie plays up on the music aspect really well. Like, seeing everything just edited in sync with the music and it sort of feels like it's one big long music video, but not in a bad way. This movie pulls it off so well because, well, Edgar Wright's just a really good director, and he's been wanting to do this project for quite a while, and you can tell his passion's really in it. The action scenes are so well shot, the music is very well picked, and the way it all works together is really impressive. Towards the beginning, there is this long take. I feel like that scene alone will be watched in film classes for years to come. And of course, yeah, the soundtrack's pretty great. Top it all off with some really great performances, and you've got a pretty kick-ass movie. At number 4, we got It. This movie was probably one of my most anticipated for the year. It was the one that I kept checking constantly to see if there was any buzz about it, if people had seen it and what they really thought about it, because I was so excited and also so terribly afraid. Because I'm actually a pretty big fan of the book. I'm currently rereading it, and in rereading it, I think I picked up on why I was a little bit apprehensive. There's a lot of stuff in this book that's kinda dumb, because the book does so many things that I knew that an adaptation of it could easily run the risk of feeling too jumbled or all over the place in terms of tone. But I was really impressed by this. Andy Muschietti, I have no idea how to pronounce your last name, but you did a really great job with this. This is an example of an adaptation handled by people who really dig the source material, and I think that's kind of neat. In rereading the book, it's interesting to see how many things were adapted into the movie that you would think probably wouldn't be that easy to adapt. On top of that, the performances are fantastic. I think all of these kids have bright futures ahead of them because they're all extremely talented actors. This film would not work if you got unconvincing child performances, but these actors really nail it. And of course, Bill Skarsgård absolutely nails it as Pennywise. And I know, we all have a soft spot for Tim Curry, I do too, but let's face it, the movie surrounding him ain't that great. To have gone with a totally different look and a totally different presentation, I think that was the best possible choice for them, and it pays off tremendously. And at number 3, we got Star Wars The Last Jedi. Yes, I'm one of the people who love Star Wars The Last Jedi, and why is that, you might ask? Well, it's because I've just been kind of burnt out on Star Wars for a long time now. I've just sort of had this series fatigue where I couldn't even bring myself to care about it. Even if I enjoyed the movies, I just wasn't getting sucked in or getting up to this level of hype that everybody seems to have for them. But this movie finally showed me what it was like to have that feeling inside of me again, and I was reminded that, oh yeah, I do like Star Wars when they actually do something new. And that's the big thing. This does feel very new for Star Wars. Don't get me wrong, there are the elements that mirror the old movies, but I think that's going to be in any Star Wars property you get, really.
Again, it's like poetry, so if they rhyme.
This was the best way to sort of subvert those expectations. And yes, I know that's become a joke recently that subverting expectations alone doesn't make a great film. That's not why I think people like it. And I think people just saying that that's why people like it is being very short-sighted, because anybody I've talked to that enjoyed it, they didn't enjoy the subversions, they enjoyed the other parts of the story. It wasn't that I enjoyed the constant subverting of my expectations, it's I enjoy the way it was done. The stuff I didn't care about was cast to the side, and the stuff I did care about took center stage. And I care about seeing where this universe can go if people just let it go somewhere instead of being stuck in the same thing over and over and over again. Like it or not, we're getting more Star Wars movies, and if they just keep doing the same old, it's gonna get boring for a lot of people because it was already boring for a lot of people. Doing the same thing over and over again doesn't excite anyone except for the hardcore who don't want to move on from the past, and that's a big theme in this movie. And for a Star Wars movie to so boldly and proudly say that, yeah, you need to move on from the past, I think that's really impressive. It got me amped for the franchise again, and for the first time in forever, I'm actually excited to see where they go. At number 2, we got yet another sequel that subverted my expectations, Blade Runner 2049. I am a huge fan of Denis Villeneuve's work so far, and this film is no exception. This film is beautiful. The cinematography, the music, the effects, the performances, oh my god, it's just so breathtaking. And I was just as cynical as everybody else when I heard they were making a sequel to Blade Runner. I mean, how could you do that? How could you make a sequel to something that iconic and expect it to go over well? But I think this might stand up there with the original. This film is just so well executed that the entire time I was just sort of in this trance while watching it. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. This is an experience movie if ever I've seen one. It's hard to explain the feeling that it gives you while watching it, but if you get into it, I think you'll really understand. They handled this as well as they possibly could have, and it really shows in the finished product because this, hands down, is the best science fiction film of the year. Now, you may have noticed that this list primarily consists of wide release films, and I don't like filling the list up with those, but I actually have a reason for it this year. The only movie theater near me doesn't have a lot of, auditoriums, so they move things in and out pretty quick. They don't get a lot of smaller releases, and also movie tickets are just really expensive in the city. So I didn't get to see a lot of these smaller release movies that I wanted to see, and I'm sure from what I hear a lot of them would be on this list, but I have to go with what I saw. However, I did get to see one smaller release this year, and it absolutely blew me away and reminded me of why I love filmmaking so much. Yes, number 1 is 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. I feel like movies like this only come around every so often, and I can easily see this film becoming this generation's Fargo. It is that good. From start to finish, I never knew where it was going to go or what turns it was going to take, and I loved every second of finding out where it went. It didn't feel like some contrived story. It felt like real life people. I actually had to look up afterwards if this was based on a true story because it just felt that real to me. The film has a great atmosphere and some terrific performances, especially by Frances McDormand. She really blew me away in this movie. The way she plays her character and the humanity she's able to bring to her is just astounding. At the start of the movie, you have a pretty good idea of what's gonna happen and which characters you're gonna empathize with and which ones you're gonna hate. And by the end of the movie, everything's just turned around so completely that you have to sit back and just say, wow. And that is the type of movie I love to see. I love things that just get you so sucked into the characters and the world they're living in and the stories and hardships that they're going through. It's just so so good. I really cannot recommend this movie enough. It is definitely the best movie I've seen all year. It might be one of the best movies I've seen in the past few years. I loved it that much. It reminded me why I love filmmaking so much, why I want to be a filmmaker myself. And really, I couldn't give the #1 spot to any other movie if that's how that movie made me feel. So that's why 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri is my #1 pick for this year. Ooh, this list took a lot longer than I thought. So yeah, that's the best films of 2017 in my opinion. Again, if you didn't like any of these movies, or if you thought I should have put some other movies on the list, you know, that's fine. It's all opinions. These are just my personal picks and the films that I really dug this year. So I hope if you haven't checked any of these out, maybe my recommendations will lead you to do so, because every movie on this list I thoroughly enjoyed and would recommend wholeheartedly. You know, we got so many great movies this year that I'm really interested to see what 2018 holds for us. But I'm gonna choose to stay optimistic and hope that at the very least we get some great movies to help us through, you know, whatever fresh horrors await us in the outside world. So thanks for watching, guys. I'll put, you know, the links to my Patreon and the GoFundMe for my movie. Thanks so much for watching this, and I'll see you next time.